Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cinematic Universe. My name is Ernesto Martinez. Joining me, as always, is the ever awesome power couple Ben and Nadia Robertson. How are you guys?
Hello.
Hey, great to be here.
All right, we are finally doing it. Man of Steel.
Well, I think Man of Steel is one of the most poignant, interestingly composed modern superhero films. It's fascinating in that it completely embraces the Superman mythology, but it also takes some pretty big chances with that mythology. It feels it's a very urgent, very topical film, and it definitely takes an approach to action that I don't think the genre's ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies where it had to be one of the most divisive ever to come out.
Oh, yeah.
We're only close to 3 years since its release, and people are in either two camps. You either love it or you hate it, and there is really no middle ground. And if you do find a middle ground, bravo, because I sure as hell haven't been able to find one. But, after 3 years, after, sailing down the hype and everything, because when this movie came out, I saw it at least 4 times in the movie theaters. Once by myself, the other one with my dad for, Flag Day weekend, Father's Day weekend, all that stuff. And the other 2 times with some friends just to, people who weren't necessarily comic book people, but they know who Superman is.
Everyone knows who Superman is.
Exactly. And really, it's the same thing I said earlier. You either like it or you don't. And I remember back when I was still giving a crap about MovieWeb.com that I wrote a very detailed review on Man of Steel, which was part research on the Superman character and part critique and what I thought about the movie. This is a character that was created by Joel Shuster and Jerry Siegel back in the late 30s. A character that was originally conceived to be like a balding, evil looking, powerful super dash man until they, changed it into a more, well, basically into the character that we know today with the jet black hair and the winged-tip point on the front of his hair, the S on the symbol, the blue and red, the underwear on the outside that pretty much mimicked the wrestling slash bodybuilder gymnast look. That's pretty much the Superman we got. A character that before his inevitable reboot after Infinite Crisis could do some pretty amazing things. This is a character that, if he wanted to, could slap someone so hard that he could change the color of their skin. Just so you can understand what comics were back in the day before Crisis on Infinite Earths. A character who could sneeze and blow away a galaxy if he wanted to. And a character who also could change the way he looked just by grabbing his face and morphing it into whatever he wanted to. Talk about overpowered, right?
I mean, it's the first time, too, that a movie's really tackled Superman and really absorbed the notion how powerful this character is supposed to be, no matter which take you explore. I mean, I've seen certain comics that suggest that Superman can lift, trillions of tons. I mean, this is a character far more powerful than most any other comic book characters, and certainly I think more powerful than the ones we've seen in the Marvel films, where I think Hulk is supposed to, max out at like 500 tons or something. Only 500 tons. I say it like it's nothing.
I mean, he's the most powerful one that's been ever shown, is he?
Well, Hulk is the most powerful Marvel villain, but Superman takes that up like however many notches. There's no super. I mean, only I guess Dr. Manhattan would be.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Superman is the most powerful.
Oh yeah,
so
definitely.
Far.
I would think so, and it's
I guess but Dr. Manhattan, would he be more so?
I think they're. Well, I mean, Dr. Manhattan, I guess, can control anything, but with Superman, it's like a level of sheer power. I mean, if Superman, I mean, in the in the Silver Age, Golden Age and Silver Age pre-Crisis stuff, Superman has these feats of strength that are just unbelievable. He moves. Even in the Donner film, he moves a planet. It's a tremendous level of power, and it's and I really like that. Sort of one of the major focuses of this movie is if he really is this powerful, then if from a human perspective, that's a pretty horrifying thing.
Yeah.
The gravity of such a existence.
Right.
Yeah, that's one of the things that when you're going to write a Superman story, be it for the big screen or for the comic book or a video game, whatever form of media, we all know one thing is true. Superman is as powerful as we need him to be.
Oh, yeah.
There is no feat, literally no feat that he can't overcome, and that's really the brilliance of the character. The world can change around him, but the character is always going to be the same. Standing for truth, justice, American way, standing up for the little guy, able to, not to sound redundant, but, overcome everything. This is a character that could be in the worst, society set standard today, and he's still going to be that little ray of sunshine that in the end will, tower through all the muck, all the darkness, and all the hate. And trust me, there's a lot of it, even if it's not warranted. But here's a movie that, I'll be honest here. As we go through the review, we will at least be talking about what we did like, things that we didn't like too much, and things that we also, scratch our heads at the end of the day when you really think about it. But ultimately give this movie the fair analysis that it deserves. Because after a while, the last time I gave this movie a rating was, like I said earlier, when I reviewed it on MovieWeb, I gave it a 4.5 out of 5.
Yeah.
And, by the end of it, I don't know if it's going to be the same because after seeing it multiple times after and one last time a couple of weeks ago, I've changed my tune because, it really is a test of a movie if it can stand the test of time, if it is one of those movies that can stand to be called a classic, and why is it a classic, or why can it be a classic?
Right.
Yeah, it's and I think that's something that the film has going for it, is it even with the love and hate sort of separation that has occurred in fandom, people really keep talking about it. It's and it's a film that almost requires you to really digest it a few times to really consider what your feelings are.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people, say that it's got a more kind of glum, less colorful palette to it, and that reflects the sort of darker tone that the film is going for. A lot of people compare it to Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight series, which, he's a producer on Man of Steel, so, that comparison could be said. But I think in the kind of world that we're living in, like you said, he's relevant throughout the times. And, a lot of people say, in this post 9/11 world that we are living in currently, and the kind of, war that's waging now, that kind of superhero film is appropriate to what's going on now. Some people say that they don't appreciate that darker tone, that Superman to them represents something more, Americana in a positive way. And I think that it takes what's happening now and tackles those issues within the realm of the character really, really well. And whether it's too dark for you or not, I think that it's definitely a reflection of now, and it might be dark, it is dark. So I think that it has modernized really well.
Exactly, because you really look at it, yes, at the forefront, it is a superhero first and foremost. But when you really start peeling it, it's actually a first contact type of movie. Very heavy on sci-fi with how Superman gets his powers, the world he comes from.
Definitely.
The characters that, surround him, both on the world and off-world. And, it has its own disaster, flair to it as well, because where there's Superman, there's going to be someone equally, if not more powerful than him. And that's one of the things that Superman really, not only just a character whose psychology is basically this. He wants to save everyone as much as he can. He wants to guide humanity to be the best that they can. But at the same time, there's a character who easily, if he wanted to, if the world gave him a reason, could stop what he's doing, go out into the stratosphere, look at the world, and really think to himself, is this world worth saving anymore? Is humanity at a point where they still need me? Do they need me? Do they even deserve my help? You know, yeah, sure, the movies don't exactly explore that too much because, like a comic book, we're reading what the character is thinking. Movies can't do that because then it's either a distraction or you have to be an amazing scriptwriter and an amazing director to even pull it off. But that's the beauty of a character like Superman.
I mean, I think you're right in the sense where it's as much of an alien first contact film as it is a disaster film, as it is a superhero film, because of the realm of the background of the character, and that it entails not just, his interaction with humans, but I love that this film, really delves immediately into Krypton, and for the first time, you really get to see so much of that world. And in terms of creativity of fleshing out, his home planet, I think they do such a wonderful job with the characters. His parents. Russel Crowe, as usual, is amazing. I mean, and they make it so ironically down to earth. It's not just out there sci-fi. It's totally grounded to real, emotions and high stakes for all, for every character, Zod included. It's coming from a very real place, as outlandish as it is. And then it, like you were saying, it grounds to the severity of the issue of Superman's existence and what that means then on Earth as well. Like you said, at any point he could destroy us if he wanted to. And I love that setup for why Batman versus Superman is going to be such a clash of a movie, because Bruce Wayne sees that true danger of someone even existing that powerful. So I think that, especially in that regard, the tone of Man of Steel definitely sets the path for that to be explored.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty cool because just from an early observation, it seems like the DC universe or the DC cinematic universe is building around a series of ethical ideas and ethical questions about these characters, where one of Man of Steel's concerns really seems to be what exactly is a hero, what exactly is a heroic act, what exactly is a villainous act.
Like exploring the morality of these decisions and the characters.
Exactly. I mean, you look at Clark Kent's human experience, and the reflection would be that humans aren't very good. I mean, he's bullied relentlessly as a child. And then which
is interesting, because I just read an article that Henry Cavill was too in his personal life, and it really has affected him. So it's interesting for him to play that kind of role as Superman.
Well, yeah, and it also creates the notion where this God has been a human, and his human experience is not wholly a positive one. He's been scared. He's scared of what other humans will do. He's scared of how angry he feels when he's hurt by people. He's afraid of
his own power because of that.
Well, yeah, his own power. But I mean, the notion that he, at one point he says he wanted to hit a kid back so bad, and he has to be reminded by his father that won't really do anything. And it's sort of what's interesting is that little by little, it's, what are these questions that Superman has to face? It's like, if he can bring Krypton back, should he? Krypton's had, he says Krypton had its chance. It's not even a matter of just simply saving it. It's like, what's the right ethical thing to do in that situation?
Right. What's natural?
How does he weigh certain ordeals against, the situation itself? It goes a little deeper, I think, into what heroism really is than most superhero films do.
I mean, right now in the comics, they're exploring, at least with the Dark Knight 3, they're exploring the master race. Kandor is right now wreaking havoc in the comics. And with Supergirl in the TV show, which, even today I'm amazed that we have a Supergirl TV show. They're talking about a character who, as I said earlier, and as Bruce Wayne has said a lot in the trailers, here's a character who can bring it all down if he wanted to. And like you mentioned, when, if you had a chance to bring back Krypton, would you? And he says Krypton had his chance. Because when you really think about it, he really can't make that decision. In the sense that, when you think about it, should I put this world I live in into a situation where I should tell them these are my people, welcome them? Because they're not going to be very welcoming. And, you can't play, the judge, juror, or executioner and tell them, well, this is going to happen, you're going to do it or not, because then you're going to jump into tyrannical territory a la Zod.
Well, it's like, just because Superman has godlike powers doesn't mean he is God.
Mm-hmm.
And that he should be their God. Russell, his father, Jor-El, is saying multiple times, like, you could be a god to them and such, and physically, yes, but, in a moral sense, they have to trust that he can make the right decision, that just because he can doesn't mean that he should, and he needs to do what's ethical.
And, I mean, that's sort of one of the many ways that the film really dives deep into these sort of ethical queries, because, you said before, there's really sort of been a through line to who Superman is as a character. And I think the great storytelling may really come from changing the circumstances that Superman's in, where Superman stays steadfast in his characterization, but the world around him is different, and the problems can be greater. And I mean, for instance, with Krypton, he's sort of dealt a card where right now all the Kryptonians besides him are trying to destroy Earth. He doesn't know what will happen of the ones that, would remain in the ship that Zod's taken over.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really interesting point where Superman this film, I think, forces him into some of the most difficult decision making that he's ever had to face in any Superman story, which makes it very, it's reminiscent of things that, like, John Byrne tried to do, and many writers have tried to tackle where Superman's in these sort of situations where if you have his power, it blurs the lines of what is heroic, because sometimes things have to be done.
This is as much also a father-son story, a tale of fathers. You have two fathers, actually. The biological one and the adoptive one. The biological father, Jonathan Kent, really has, as soon as we start going through the flashbacks of Clark Kent's life, not only is Clark a blessing for Martha Kent. Is it Martha Kent?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Martha Kent. I just realized both both Bruce and
Yep.
Clark share a mother with the same name.
Exactly, yeah.
That just hit me right now.
Mm-hmm.
So we have Jonathan and Martha Kent. It's a blessing for them. They have a son and everything. But there is that fear that what happens if they take you away from me? In the same sense that for Clark, before he was catapulted into space, the planet took his parents away from him. You have the father who's basically telling him, be this beacon of hope for them, be this God for them. And you have the other one who knows and sees the potential his son can be and can accomplish. And he's afraid that the world is not going to welcome him, that the world is going to take him away from them. And he does everything in his power, as much as a human can, to keep him a secret. To the conversation that they have about, should he have let the kids on the bus die? For a character that we've all grew up reading, grew up watching, and loved dearly as Superman's, adoptive father, for him to just tell him that maybe he should have let him die just to keep his identity a secret, that's
a hard combo to have with your kid.
Exactly.
So, hey, son, you should have let those kids die,
Yeah, and especially when you tell your kid, hey, you're not human, you're from another world, this is the ship that carried you to us. And to look at your kid to tell you, well, can I still be your son? And he tells him, well, you are my son.
Yeah.
How do you not cry from that?
Oh yeah, I mean that was a tearjerker every time.
It's also too that this is one of the first times that Jonathan Kent has been shown, I think, in a more grounded way than a lot of times in the comics or in previous films. He's sort of depicted as this sort of all-knowing moral center, and I do like the screenplay for Man of Steel goes in a different direction with that, where Jonathan Kent says pretty directly that regardless of what Clark does, he's going to change the world. So it's really determining if his actions are going to make the world better or worse, or if it's going to be something that helps people or scares people. And it brings to there's these notions of Kent sort of preparing his son for questions that are almost impossible to answer, which I think he's ultimately dealt later, where you have to make a right decision. And there could be, how do you know exactly what's the best thing for everyone? You have to have that burden. You have to save people, but you have to protect a greater society and an entire world.
Yeah, I mean, that's an unimaginable burden.
Yeah, I mean, and it's something that's rarely discussed, is sometimes we pick Superman to always doing the right thing easily, when I think his quest for hope would be a lot more complicated, with a lot more shades of gray than we'd give it credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Which is why I like the tone of this movie so much.
Yeah, and I agree.
Every hero is as good as its villain. And the villain that we have here is General Zod, who draws a lot of inspirations, not just from the Richard Donner era, but the Brian Azzarello and Jim Lee depiction of Superman for Tomorrow, with the whole Phantom Zone. Krypton at the brink of destruction, you have a character whose single purpose was to be bred for one thing: to protect his people, to be a warrior class, and that's all he's ever known. And any threat that comes to his people, he has to defend them from said threat, even if that threat is his own people. Hence the council being attacked, hence the coup to dethrone the Kryptonian government, etc., going to the revelation that Jor-El was able to create Krypton's first natural-born child, which, in the most hammiest and hilarious way possible, he says, "Mercy!" I just love watching that scene, because he really spat out every saliva he needed to say, "Mercy!" And
yeah, Shannon sells the hell out of it.
Michael Shannon is amazing in this
movie.
movie.
Michael Shannon is so amazing. That is
I will find him, Lara. I will find him.
It's just, he brings such a caliber to that role. I mean, the whole casting of that film is just so top notch. But Michael Shannon as Zod is just, whoever thought of that is like gold star of that year. It's just like so right. I mean, he just totally dissolves into something that could, like, that is just such an absurd character for someone like Michael Shannon to play, considering his other, films that he's been in, and he just absolutely sells it with such emotional realism, and there's such sincerity in his sentiments that you almost, instead of saying that he's really a villain, it's almost like he's like a lost anti-hero or something, because he truly believes in what he's doing. It's not villainism as much as a true heroicism in his eyes. It's through his perspective and point of view. It depends on how we're looking at what's heroic, whose eyes. Because if you look at it through Zod's perspective, I mean, he is really trying to, keep the last of his race alive. Mm-hmm. And, it's so black and white with the issues there. And I think, Michael Shannon just does such a good job of portraying all that so delicately, but yet so powerfully and believably.
Yeah, of course. And the best villains are usually the ones who are always doing things because they think it's the right thing to do. Look at Lex Luthor. Look at Magneto. Look at, Ben's favorite character of all time, Victor Von Doom.
Oh, yes.
They all do things because they believe that's what needs to happen in order to ensure safety the way they see it. Say Zod, at least this movie's version of Zod, say Zod would have won, taken down Superman, taken down all of Earth, repopulate said planet for a new Krypton, which another great story that you guys should read, New Krypton.
Mm-hmm.
He would have been a hero to them years to come. Here's Zod, the savior of Krypton on New Krypton, who brought us back from the brink of extinction.
Oh, yeah. There's the notion that history is written by the winners. It's in hindsight we decide who the heroes and villains of different conflicts are. And there's a real potential to see Zod in a heroic light that the script opens up. I mean, for humanity, of course he's this incredibly monstrous figure for what he's willing to do to our planet and our entire species, but at the same time, Zod is trying to preserve the purity of his world, no matter what. And it's an interesting.
And he's
motivation.
like a Hitler of Krypton, except way more.
Well, I mean, even more so, you get more the impression that he's. Even then, you don't detect corruption in Zod. Where some like almost a Hitler figure might have actual other interests involved. Where with Zod, his interest purely
really
is
pure.
Krypton. Yeah.
Yeah, and you bring up Hitler. Hitler was one of those political people who used a lot of propaganda to, promote his message and what he thought was the world he wanted to see. Zod also uses propaganda. He hacks everybody's television set, phone, what have you, to tell them, my name is General Zod. I travel from here. You are harboring one of my people. Surrender now or die. Stuff like that. It's also
definitely scare tactics.
Exactly. It also shows just how powerful a symbol can be. You look at the Superman symbol. That is the most recognizable, or one of the most recognizable brands in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Then you have Zod here, and what brand does he use? Death. And that spreads like wildfire.
Yeah, that's very true. And I think...
Well, everyone's afraid of death.
Yeah.
Yeah, but some people who's afraid of death, they know that it's going to take a while to come, or they know that it can happen anytime, and they live their lives to the fullest before that time comes. But then you have a character who's literally bringing it to their doorstep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's true. Well, he's also sort of lived a life of death for the past 30 years or so, where his world's destroyed. Basically, they've scrapped together sort of a living death for all those years until he found Kal-El and came to Earth for him. It's interesting that Zod, is sort of on this road that he didn't necessarily choose for himself. He's stayed steadfast to this one course, and this is sort of where it ends for him.
Yeah, which leads to the last few moments of this movie, which is the most epic ever.
Mm-hmm.
That just really feels like it's oozing out of a comic book. Watching these two titans collide with each other, punching and kicking, screaming, heat vision, flying around. Here's a character who, ultimatum. This can only end in two ways. I die or you die. Period. Which really brings up to the next topic as the most controversial moment in the movie, and the one part of the movie that people focus so much on that goes back to what I said earlier. You either love it or you hate it. Now, in this world that's set up, because before Batman vs. Superman was announced, in this movie alone, Superman is supposed to be the end-all, be-all, granddaddy of all superheroes. the first ever to just come out and be shown to the world.
Mm-hmm.
And there is no, that we know so far in this universe that's now growing, there is no physical plane, there is no prison alive that could hold Zod. Even if Superman were to say, maybe I'll just take him off world and kick him somewhere else into space. No, because this character is not going to let you take him off world. He is going to keep bringing the battle back to Earth, back to the most populated points on the planet, so that by causing as much destruction as possible to hurt you, Superman. So what happens? We go to the train station scene. This family of four, Zod wants to burn them just to tell them, you want to protect these people, then watch them die. Bringing Superman to do the one thing that he didn't want to do, which is more than one thing at the same time. He breaks Zod's neck, because that's all he could do. Zod was not going to allow him to move from that spot. Zod wanted to incinerate that family right in front of him, just to show him that you have to kill me if you want to stop me, because I will blow up this planet just to kill you.
Yeah.
So, what do you do when you're faced in a situation like that? Here's a character who saw his own father die, trying to save others. One of the reasons that this movie...
A dog, no less.
A dog, no less. One of the points this movie makes, that if you ever needed a reason to see and show why Superman needs to save up everybody, that's one of those main reasons. And then, after killing Zod, you get this new... At least I'm hoping that this will be explored in the later films. You get a new character that now holds life very dear to him, because not only did he kill Zod, he killed the last of his kind. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think they're going to explore Supergirl in this universe that came from 10,000 years ago, nor do I think they're going to explore the Phantom Zone characters anytime soon, so... And that's when the whole world is very divided with this movie. There was too much destruction. Superman wasn't saving anybody. Superman was causing this. Superman was doing that. Superman this, Superman that.
It's just honestly so ridiculous. They say it multiple times. You know, Faora says when they're fighting in Smallville that no matter, for every person you save, we're going to kill 1 million more. And that's the mindset of the people that he's trying to stop. I mean, you have to kill them. There's no way not to kill them. They've made it quite clear that they want to kill everybody on the planet. There's no changing of that mind. There's no amount of trying to fight them in another location that's going to change. Like, even if you did, you'd still have to kill them. Even if it didn't happen, where it did in the film. Even if he, threw them somewhere else that was less populated or in space. I mean, at the end of the day, he would still have to kill Zod and all of them because just of their ultimate goal. And, you have to think about it too. I mean, they were fighting constantly, back and forth, hand to hand, huge blows. There was really not much moment, I think, for that fight to go anywhere but where it happened to go within the city. I don't think that there was it's not like, one person takes a hit and they're about to go down and they're weak, and the other person takes it and they're about to go down. I mean, it's like nonstop, just back and forth, smashing. And, Zod has just come to Earth. Think how strong he has to be, really. Clark has spent his whole life developing, at least controlling his skills, and then, a little bit ahead of time of Zod, really starts to fully explore them. But Zod has, just come and is, adjusted to the atmosphere, and look how strong he is compared to Superman. I mean, He, even on Krypton, was born solely to be the protector, of Krypton, and be bred and raised and trained as a warrior. Superman has lived his life as a schoolboy, then going into odd jobs, and then sort of, realizes his powers later. So you have to think, these two are going head to head. The amount of power is incredible. And so I think that what happened in the film, as far as so many people dying and buildings getting exploded and destroyed, and then him having to ultimately kill him, I think that's all pretty daringly accurate, and I'd like to see, honestly, more of that. I'm not afraid to see death in films like that, because that's, I mean, a portrayal of how that kind of power and those kind of battles would really go down, you know, especially if it is in a city. I mean, there's just no way of getting around that amount of destruction. I think it's unrealistic to try otherwise.
Well, it's, again, it was like what I was mentioning earlier, where you take the Superman concept and you renew it with more modern or mature circumstances, or understanding of more ethical understanding than you might in older stories that might be more fantasy or comedic or satirical. What was actually pretty neat to me is, since Man of Steel has come out, I finally got the opportunity to read Alan Moore's Miracle Man. Mm-hmm. And to me, it's very, very, very clear that Snyder, who's a very big fan of Alan Moore, referenced a lot of Miracle Man and Man of Steel, where there's basically, not to spoil anything, but Miracle Man is a sort of Captain Marvel, Shazam analog that was from a British comic in the 50s.
Kimota!
Exactly. Komoda, and then you transform. And eventually, Miracle Man has to, or Marvel Man if you're British, has to battle one of his former sidekicks, Kid Miracle Man, who has since, I guess, turned to the dark side, or however you want to put it. And it really explores the fact that if Kid Miracle Man what happens if he creates a situation where the hero is left with no options. It's basically even hinted that if, Kid Miracle Man could kill like 50,000 people in a couple of hours if he wanted to, So and then that tremendous level of power where each punch can shatter a building's worth of windows or cause a near earthquake, or that just huge potential. It doesn't change anything about the sort of golden age classic superhero concepts. It just adds a new dose of reality to them. And I think that's what Snyder and Goyer and Christopher Nolan all did with Man of Steel. Zod really lays it out. I'll kill every single person. And so, right off the bat, Superman, Kal-El Clark, knows what he's dealing with. And he has to continue taking the fight to this person who, as Nadia mentioned before, Zod's been on Earth for, 48 hours?
Mm-hmm. Very briefly.
And he's already nearly as strong as Superman, if not as strong. Mm-hmm. He's already sort of mastered flying. He's mastered heat vision. There's all these things that all of a sudden he can do.
Yeah.
And the longer he's in Earth's atmosphere, I'm sure he only hones those skills. And he's very clearly laid out his agenda. He goes, if you don't kill me, I'm going to kill every single person. And he has the capability to do, you really think about it. Let's say Zod could do something comparable to what I was talking about with Miracle Man. Let's say Zod could kill 50,000 people in a couple of hours, which isn't that absurd, as fast as he can fly, throw people out of windows, burn people down with heat vision, just crush their heads.
Well, you certainly have to think how many people might have died in that scene, the fighting.
Well, but even that.
Metropolis is comparable to like New York or something. How many million people live there? And that was like right in the center.
Well, he's already killed however many people with the world engine and trying to terraform. And so, taking that into account, let's make a conservative estimate that Zod can kill, 40 or 50,000 people every couple of hours. In a day, you're looking at 500, 600,000 people that he's killed in a day. Mm-hmm. And then you multiply that by a week's time, yep. And you're talking that he's killed in the millions by the end of the week. It creates a really interesting scenario that not also, we've kind of moved past a time, and very much in the post Alan Moore world, I think. Alan Moore, Frank Miller, those kind of writers, that really explored what happens when super villains, more than anything, have realistic motivations, where they murder, where they terrorize, where they have corruption to a level that has to be dealt with in non-traditional ways. I think Superman's really left without another option. Basically, he can try to take the fight somewhere else, and people may die. They can keep fighting it out in the city, and more people will die, or he can crack this guy's neck, and it's over. And so part of the difficult decisions that he had to make earlier, like not getting to choose when he can inform other people of his alien heritage, or not being able to show his powers until the time was right. I mean, in this situation, he's got to make the choice to kill this guy. And he does.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, it's really the only thing that can be done there to truly end it. You can argue that he could have done this and that, but people with those intentions that are that powerful, that can truly accomplish what they're actually wanting to do, what's going to stop them otherwise?
Well, it also introduces the sort of the underpinnings of, can you really fault Superman for anything in this? Because it's Zod committing the acts of violence. I mean, he's merely trying to stop one person's acts of terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
Zod was going to kill everyone, so he's got to do something. And
they clearly don't have anything on Earth that could contain him.
There's nothing to contain him.
I mean, if he can survive in space, where is he going to fly him out to? I mean, you could say, I guess, the sun, but it doesn't like them power. Like, what would that have done?
Yeah, and considering that kryptonite hasn't been introduced yet until Batman vs. Superman comes out, the idea of red sun radiation hasn't been introduced either.
Right.
I mean, and it's not like Superman could have gone back to the abandoned ship and create a gun that mimics the world engine just to take away his powers for a bit. But at the same time, you have to take Earth's suns and turn it into a red sun. And that's just a comic book in me talking right now. But at the same time, when you're really looking at it, the world that this movie set out to build, you don't have a lot of options yet. And you brought up Frank Miller. Look at the situation when Batman is fighting his greatest foe ever, the Joker. When they're in the tunnel of love.
Oh, yeah. Dark Knight Returns.
Yeah. Batman was pretty much in a situation where he just said, no more.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting concept that's been introduced in modern superhero storytelling. Where at what point is it heroic to not kill? One of the great modern examples I thought too was, I believe, it was Jeff Loeb in his Hush storyline for Batman. Gave a moment where he basically threw out the idea: at what point do we condemn Batman and Jim Gordon for letting the Joker live when all these people die every time he breaks out, and all these people get injured and crippled and have to lifelong repercussions from this person's actions? It's an interesting concept. How long is Peter Parker accountable for what Norman Osborn does, or how long is Matt Murdock accountable for what Bullseye does? It's something that's appeared a lot in modern comics, and I think it's a really fascinating question. And in this instance, whatever the Joker or Bullseye or the Green Goblin can do, you got to multiply that times 1,000 for what Zod is capable of. Superman has to deal with a whole other level, and even outside of Zod, if Brainiac or Darkseid or Mongol or whoever shows up, I mean, there's a potential for destruction in his enemies that's almost no other superpowered character faces.
The realization that at that moment that he is the last of his kind, he screams out in anger and rage and sadness at the same time.
Yeah, it's a heavy moment.
Yeah, it is. Which kind of brings up some of my criticism of the movie, and we'll get to them later in the review. But, we all want our heroes to be the best that they can be. And we live in a world where, in a perfect society, you want to consider that killing someone should be the last resort and it shouldn't be the first one. Yes, you can end the threat right there, but let's go with the alternative first before we go and push the red button, because once you push it, or I guess say open Pandora's box, you're never going to close it.
Right.
Which is one of the things that with Batman is just like, he feels that if he goes and crosses that line, that everyone wins and he loses because he lost control.
Right.
With and I know people out there with all their infinite wisdom will say that, well, Superman has killed before and Batman has killed before. That's not the point. The point is the context of it. You guys pretty much explained the, half to death, the context of which Superman found himself, and the various ways that when you look at Superman and when the Dark Knight Returns, the position that they were found in. So that's one of the reasons why I criticize at least the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of movies of them that they have genuinely have been great, but what they've all lacked is a memorable villain. And Zod, you can grab a chunk of the villains that Marvel has used, and Zod will just go bing, bing, bing. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
A lot of you are forgettable.
Yeah, it's a vastly greater threat and a more memorable one.
Yeah, which is why when The Winter Soldier came out, while being a very different, adaptation to its comic book counterpart, one of the reasons why Winter Soldier is memorable to me because not only does it tackle, the propaganda, the politics, and the idea that, when you least expect it, your allies can be your enemies, but it tackled the world that we live in today. We have all this technology, all this source of power that is pretty much looking at us through our front door, through our back door, in our living room. How is that not considered, a villain in itself? Just peeking through the court and saying, "Hello, I know what you're doing." I just wanted to throw that out there. The difference between why I love the DC Rogues Gallery versus the Marvel ones that we've seen on the big screen, just the big screen.
Yeah, I think that's a really. I mean, in that instance too, what we're seeing out of the DC gallery is like a sort of a real haphazard view of or relatively speaking, a haphazard view of how to handle, dealing with others with compromise. There is no compromise in these characters. Zod is uncompromising his view of what Krypton needs to survive, and then we'll eventually see that the Joker appears to be an uncompromising character as well. It's just very fascinating where DC's sort of going with this, and even to a degree, it appears that Batman will be that same kind of character. His refusal to compromise, and Superman had to the best of his ability find compromise. And it's all about the situation, sort of the real world situation surrounding the internal conflict and the narrative conflict. And I think Winter Soldier and Man of Steel share those kind of things in common. That ability to balance both in internal and external conflict.
Yeah. Let's go to what works and what doesn't work with Man of Steel. I want to at least shed light on some of the things that after watching the movie multiple times that really they could have either been done very differently or edited differently. After Superman's battle with Zod, I felt that they were a little too quick to cut to the drone crashing in the middle of the desert and General Lennix going, "Are you effing stupid?" After watching a very emotional moment with Clark Kent killing the last of his kind, I felt that could have been handled a bit better, and the fact that after he takes off and breaks the speed of sound, Lennix turns to his officer and she's like giggling because I think he's kind of hot. I mean, I get what they were going for, but at the same time, it's just like, you could have put that somewhere else. I feel that, the relationship with Clark and Lois Lane, I know some people take issue with the fact that they're throwing out the whole secret identity, and Lois won't have that whole, love triangle, if you will, between Clark and Lois or Lois and Superman. They just do away with that and just go straight to the point. This is this is Clark Kent, but he is also as much Clark as he is Superman.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really, even after the first time it happened, I really wasn't that convinced in the relationship. And that quote that she says that, what happens when you're falling down to earth, it's downhill from there, something like that. It was
Yeah.
ridiculous. I mean,
I think they were really trying to insert some what they felt was like much needed, comedic relief and some levity after, like you said, such an epic, devastating battle, loss of life in the previous scene.
mhm.
I can see that it definitely could come off as kind of clunky or hokey or not well timed, considering just such a gap in tone, far-sighted at each end, so close to each other in the film.
Yeah.
I just feel like that's what they were trying to go, is kind of bring it up a little bit, so audiences just weren't left feeling like, such a heavy weight of what had happened, the scene previous. But yeah, it's kind of a nod towards the 50s, like, well, gee whiz, golly, the kind of humor that I think they're kind of going for.
Yeah.
Some people kind of could buy into it and be okay with it, and I can see how others would think it was a little bit
playing
much.
into, I guess, a certain romantic expectation in Superman stories. I mean, did I think the delivery of that particular line was perfect? Nah, but I mean, I think it's handled well enough, sort of a balance between comic bookiness, serious science fiction, absurdity, and grounded realism.
Yeah.
I think, it was probably the best punctuating moment to give that romantic beat between Clark and Lois. And, you need the romantic one-liner in a superhero film. You need your go-get-em tiger line.
Yeah, the LexCorp gas tanks, and Zod pushes him toward him, and Superman just flies over, and it blows up the garage behind him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I felt at that point, I'm just like, God damn, I hope there was nobody in there. Because it just felt like, you could have stopped that. I'm just saying. And this is really just more of a nitpick than a negative. It's just like, you could have stopped that thing from colliding with the building behind you, bro.
Yeah, and then the one thing that I kind of think that I really dig about the feel of the movie is that it seems to get lost in certain criticism, that it is the first two fights of Superman's life. And I feel like there's a lot of mistakes made.
And that really, you could say, kind of the two actual fights ever, because even when he was a kid, he got picked on all the time and faced bullies, but he couldn't fight back then. This is like literally the first fight he's had, plus also the first fight he's had with all these new powers that he's explored,
right.
At the strength level that they are at, and plus also now it's no longer like school children bullies, it's people that could like destroy everything.
It'll be interesting to see how they handle Superman's conflicts with other superpowered beings in future films.
Especially with Wonder Woman, because she's practically him, only as a woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman and Doomsday and whoever else shows up. It'll be very intriguing to see, has he adjusted his approach and how he has.
Right, like how he fights now, how he tries to maneuver everything and control everything now after some time has passed.
Exactly. I want to really dive into my favorite moments in this movie. Number one, which is felt throughout the entirety of this movie, Hans Zimmer's epic score.
Oh, yeah.
Beautiful.
Oh, my God. Listen.
It's a great one. It's one of the better superhero scores of recent years.
It's like heart-swelling at times.
Oh, every movie needs a great score. And when you look at a superhero movie, there's always that one theme song about them that as soon as you listen to them, you instantly recognize what it's about. For me, and for a lot of people, you have the Star Wars theme. Mm-hmm. Everybody knows as soon as they hear that, they think of Star Wars. When you hear the Danny Elfman Batman theme, you automatically think of Batman. And suddenly when you think of The Dark Knight, you think of the Hans Zimmer's theme. You have the John Williams score of Superman and everything. Now you have a new interpretation that I think I I don't know how I worded it in my movie web review, but when you take Hans Zimmer's version of Batman, you can feel the the battle. You can feel a character who's going for brawn and justice. And when you have Superman, you really the sky's the limit when you listen to that song. Like what?
Oh yeah, it makes me feel like I can fly. It's just
exactly it.
It's
Which,
epic.
yeah, which jumps into one of my favorite scenes in the movie when Superman just suddenly lets himself loose and starts flying for the first time. The kid-like joy in his face when he's like, "I'm doing it, I'm flying. Oh shit, I'm hitting the mountain." All that stuff.
Yeah, and it's cool because it adds sort of a bit of that gee whiz superhero fun and a sense of hope to some of the darker elements of the film. So really well, and it's one of Zimmer's more interesting scores, top to bottom. It has some really brutal, intense kind of cues, and some very hopeful and touching and heartfelt cues. It's a really neat balance of how to approach superhero music. It makes you really excited to see where the next few DC scores will go.
Right.
Yeah, because Hans Zimmer made it a point that when he does Batman v Superman, and I'm hoping Justice League, that whatever theme he's going to assign to the character, that's supposed to be felt throughout the entire cinematic universe. So whoever is scoring whichever hero next has already the blueprints to work off from.
No, completely.
Yeah, and that's assuming that's
Junkie
how it
XL
goes.
involved too. Yeah.
Oh, Junkie XL.
Yeah. Oh.
One of my favorite composers now of all time. Thank you, Matt Max.
Yeah. I don't know what we have in store for Batman with Junkie XL, but
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very good.
It's like Brothers in Arms is the closest thing to a Batman theme we have.
Yeah, completely.
It's just the energy in that. It makes you feel like you're going to explode.
Mm-hmm.
It's just...
Do you guys have like any favorite moments in Man of Steel?
What's that?
Like any like really favorite standout moments in the I mean, we've pretty much mentioned everything we like and stuff, but in terms of like really favorite like go-to moments in the movie, does any one of them like really stick out for you?
Man, there's a few.
Yeah.
In all of them, I would really kind of contribute to Zack Snyder. I guess there would be three that really stick out. There's pretty much everything on Krypton at the beginning of the film, which is executed in a way that is very sort of 1930s, 1940s sci-fi. It's darker. It's a little more grounded, but it almost has no sense of irony to it. It's where Snyder sort of really dives into the roots of what kind of stories inspired Superman and doesn't really try to change it or quote unquote make it better. So you get this crazy old-fashioned space kingdom with all these creatures and whatnot, and the way that's executed is tremendous. I also really love the flashback at the end of the film where Snyder sort of goes against his previous approach of shooting comic book fiction, and he basically adopts Terrence Malick's style.
Definitely.
Yeah, sort of photorealism.
And again, that Americana sense.
Yeah.
Very Tree of Life inspired.
Right, and you get to see Clark, playing this cape in the field in Kansas.
The dog running around, the tall grass, and the laundry in the wind.
And Snyder sort of found sort of a common bond, really, between like Terrence Malick and Superman, basically, and sort of created this great emotional moment. And then, I think maybe the best superhero, supervillain composition I've ever seen in a movie is that amazing series of 3 shots when Zod first uses his heat vision in the building, just rips. He screams with his hand around his face. It looks like an illustration out of a comic book, and it's these energy
A
blast
lot of
coming out of
shots
his
like
eyes.
that. The CGI, the
Right.
special effects holds up just amazingly. It does almost look like it's out of
Yeah.
a comic as opposed to
Definitely.
on a movie.
Oh, and I guess I'd throw in too Superman fights the world engine. It seems like a series of shots just look like comic book illustrations. Like Snyder's understanding of the visual aesthetics, comic storytelling is unbelievable.
And the Reeve meld as he's going into the, light of the world engine.
Yeah.
That's also amazing how similar they look and how they kind of snuck that in there. I have to also say too, I love, as you were talking about before, like the whole. I mean, basically everything Russel Crowe. Then I mean, he's just so amazing. Like when he has the voiceover when Superman is walking out into the sun after being in the ship and discovering all that pod and everything comes out. That voiceover's going on, and he's looking into the sun, and he starts to try to fly. It's just like, the emotions, all the emotions.
Yeah.
And then also too, when Jor-El is saying he could be a god to them, and just strike this panel, and he does, and he sees Lois hurling towards the earth, and then he flies out to her. It's, in that cross-like, symbol as he floats away, and I love all the Christ-like imagery. It's just, it's awe-inspiring.
Actually, I'm glad you said that. It reminds me, one of my absolute favorite parts of the movie is the most powerful character, Superman, but the bravest character is Lois Lane. And I think that's a really cool element of the movie. The fearlessness of Lois Lane in that film is something I really.
Oh yeah, I mean, she, what's his name? The soldier, was like, yeah, don't wander off. You're gonna freeze at night. Or what does she do? She goes out at night. Like, doesn't think twice about it. Like, she's made to break the rules. She does not have the fear in her. We were even talking when we were watching it. She goes around the corner, on the ice cliff to get inside the tunnel that Superman has just burned through. She's like, damn, that's scary.
Yeah.
I don't think I would have it to do that, let alone at night and by myself.
Oh yeah. Faora pretty much rocked Superman's world and pretty much rocked my world. This is a woman who is basically the blueprint of what we've all would want to see in a Wonder Woman movie, and we're getting that in a month from now. The fact that the general who pretty much led the assault on the Kryptonians, he knows he's fighting a losing war. He's firing every single bullet that he can. Played greatly by Nathan Lane. He pulls out his knife knowing that this woman is, that's like a mosquito bite to her. She pulls out her knife and she's like, a good death is its own reward. And he's the first one to make a move.
Oh, yeah. I mean, he's also fearless. That's what he kind of comes off as a little asinine in the beginning when he kind of bullish way he treats Lois. But towards the end of it, you kind of have some mad respect for him.
Yes.
I mean, he doesn't back down even in the face of absolute certain death.
Yep. So, we could really talk about this for hours, but we don't have hours. I'm just saying, for anybody who's listening, you can tell that we can go as long as we can. Because there is really, when the movie is as good as we find it, we can really talk. I mean, in all the reviews that I've done with the Robertsons, when they start talking, I just let them ride. There's really nothing to stop them or I when the movie is this good. And if I were to rate it right now, at least after, 3 years since it came out and everything, I would adjust my rating on a 10-point scale, like an 8 out of 10, which is about as fair as I can give it to any movie. Knowing everything that, I felt that it could be changed. Knowing some things aesthetically that I, at least myself personally, could have done differently. But an 8 really is the really a definitive score I can give for this movie. It's no 57%, but then again...
Is that what it is on the tomato meter?
That was the last time, at least when the movie before it came out, that's the score I read. I don't know what it is now. Or 57 was the last one. I could be wrong. It might have gone up a bit, or it might have gone down since. You know, that score really changes on its own sometimes. But this is Superman. This is the Man of Steel. A story of an immigrant, a traveler from another world that really carries a lot of symbolism to him, be it the symbolism of Moses, the symbolism of Jesus and the Son of God, the Son of two worlds. A character that really is the embodiment of the old and the current Americana, that anybody who, anybody can identify with this character. Not the fact that, oh, he's too powerful, he can do anything, he is not identifiable. Bullshit. This is a character who came into a world that could have turned him down, and that's the same thing that we go through every day in this country and in any other world, where we welcome this individual into our world, and he shows us what he can be with the resources at his disposal, and that is as relatable as any other person on this planet. I needed to get that off my chest.
Well said.
Because every time somebody says that he's too powerful and he's not relatable, fuck you. That's what I want to say.
He's said it, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, it's a bigger cop-out to criticize the character for that than it is to say that him being indestructible is a cop-out. I mean, part of the burden is having that essence of humanity and having to deal with such immense power and responsibility.
Yeah, didn't Alan Moore say it best? Beneath this mask is an idea, and ideas are bulletproof.
Exactly.
And who else is bulletproof?
Kal-El.
Boom! Mic drop.
Mic drop. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I probably have a little bias in giving it this rating, but I'm actually gonna give it an A or a 5 out of 5 or however you want to put it. I think it's got some areas where it could improve, but I think most movies do. And I just think the approach to the script, the way it shows the origin kind of dispersed throughout the current narrative, I think the stylistic chances it takes and the boldness that it has makes it a really special superhero film. So I'm going to give it a perfect score.
I mean, I would agree, between 4.5 and 5 as well for me. I mean, it's one of my most favorite comic book films to date. It's so, emotionally there. The special effects are there. The acting caliber's there. The issues are there. The themes are there. I mean, I think I'm a big Zack Snyder fan as well. So it was one of those movies where I got chills literally every single time I saw the trailer, online or before another film. And I just knew, in no part of my heart was worried that this film wasn't going to be anything but awesome and amazing. And it was it's one of the few times when that happens, and it also completely delivered. So whenever that happens, it's always a real joy for me. So, I mean, I don't know if I'd call it perfect, but like Ben said, I mean, hardly any film really ever is. So considering what it was all going for, and I just thought it was great.
All right. And that's our thoughts for Man of Steel, everybody. If you ever want to pick up a Superman book, or if you're thinking of starting to read a comic book, my recommendations are pretty much J. Michael Straczynski's Earth 1 series, Jeff Johns' Secret Origins, Jim Lee and Brian Azzarello's Superman for Tomorrow, Mark Waid's Superman Birthright, Alan Moore's For the Man Who Has Everything, and if you want an analog to that character, you can also read Miracle Man. And really, the endless supply is right there. Pick up a book and read your favorite characters if you want. No pressure. If you're one of those who, you're a fan of the Donner era, nobody's going to take that away from you. They're still there. You can still relive them and enjoy them, because that's the beauty of movies and comic books. They're going
especially
to
comic books,
especially
because those
comic
characters
books
were created to be changed and live in different universes. That's what's so wonderful about them, is that they're the flexibility there. They should never limit it to just one vision.
Yeah. And like McSplicklesticks once said, they may be an image on a page, color on a page, lines on a page, and you might tell yourself, well, that's not real. I'm real. Well, think about this. By the time I pass away, Superman's still going to be saving the day. My name is Ernesto Martinez, and as always, you can follow me on Twitter at MartinezXYZ. You can follow me on MoviePilot.com, Cinematic Universe, and if you're listening to us on YouTube, you can just subscribe, and you'll be listening more to Cinematic Universe Ultimate. Bye-bye, guys.
Bye.